Hey, this is Stephanie with Empower Physical Therapy. And today I'm going to talk about where should I massage to get rid of neck pain. And so we're going to go into a little bit more details of what does the neck look like? Why does the tissue get tight? And, will a massage work or is there something else that might be better? So when we look at the neck, or we're just going to take a cross section of the spine, we have this disc, which is this round circle that's right here. And we have these rings around these discs, and these rings help keep everything intact. And the majority of the time when people have problems within their neck, these rings are intact. Rarely do we have where the rings have been like completely ruptured. That's a completely different symptoms. That typically is going to need to have surgery. If your rings and everything are intact, then you pretty much can resolve this with a good physical therapist that understands kind of what's going on. So if you think about this, we have our spinal cord that's in the center, and off the spinal cord are the nerves. They come off to the side through here. And so when you have a little bit of a herniation, it basically a couple things can happen. You can have just pain because it hasn't really hit the nerve. And when you feel like it just has pain, that's typically where it can refer into the neck, the shoulder, between the shoulder blades. Sometimes it can refer down into the shoulder, the upper part of the shoulder. That's kind of the referral patterns of what happens. And then if it pinches a nerve, those are very specific nerve roots. So you'll have specific areas, whether it's on the outside of the arm, on the inside of the arm, down into the thumb or the pinky. And based on like where the location of the pain or the numbness or those kind of things gives us indications of where the nerve is being compressed. So without even having an MRI, we pretty much can determine like what's going on. The only reason that we would need an MRI is if we think that there's something, red flags that are going on. There's, cord compression, which again, we pretty much can tell if there's cord compression. You're going to have some different symptoms with that. But for the most part, the neck and the shoulder can be resolved most of the time without having any kind of surgery, especially when it's I'm not sure what I did. I just started hurting one day. There was no falls. There was no massive car accidents, those kind of things that are being played. The majority of the people that come into our office are like, I'm not really sure what I did. So this is kind of the disc. Now, when we think about it, and I'm going to show some pictures here later on, a lot of times we're always in front of our computer with a forward head and always kind of looking down. And if that happens, if this is the front of the disc, think of like a jelly donut. We can move the material one direction or the other direction. It's how we kind of can move our neck in different positions is because of the gel that's able to kind of move. But if we're repeatedly moving in one direction only, then what happens is it's kind of like you're moving the gel to the back, and that's kind of what happens. And when you have that, that's when you'll get some herniations or some damage to these rings. Now, if you think of these rings, they have a blood supply to them, so they can have some pain when you hit some of those outer layers of those rings. And it's not any different than like if you had an ankle sprain and you twist your ankle and put pressure on that ligament, it's going to hurt. So very similar to this is when you put pressure on those rings that have been damaged from doing something repeatedly over and over and over again, then that is going to be a problem. And you're going to have some pain with that. And when you have pain, naturally what happens is our muscles want to tense up and protect. And so the muscle tension that you get in your shoulders, between your shoulder blades, in the front part of the shoulder, all these things are related to tightness from protection, and you've got to get to the source of the problem. Otherwise, you're just treating the symptom. And this is why, I titled this, where do I get my massage? But when you do get a massage, and these are going to be some good indicators, and your pain returns within hours or within a day, it means that the tissue, there's something else that's causing the tissue to tighten up, and you've got to get to that source. So even if you're like, oh, I have a little bit of tension, I'm going to get a massage in my shoulder, between my shoulder blades, and your pain returns, that should be the first indication of, ooh, there's something else going on that is fixable, and I need to get to someone that can help me, because continuing to do massages just to maintain and live is not a good way of living. And it can get very expensive to continually having to do that, every 3 days or so because you're in so much pain. So that's the first thing. So when we think of this, is we've got to look at, is there something going on with a disc that needs to be looked at? And if you go to a good physical therapist, again, they're going to be able to find out those things. So here's all the spine. And we're going to talk about, the neck, and we're going to get into the thoracic spine a little bit as well. So the upper neck moves very different than the mid neck, which moves very different than the lower neck. So we always have to look at different areas of the neck, because you can have issues in the upper neck that can be creating problems. You can have issues in the mid neck that could be creating problems. You can have issues in the lower neck that can be creating problems. But the reason why I wanted to also address this is there's also our thoracic spine here. These are the ribs that come in through here. And when we're always in front of a computer and round it out, I'm going to again show you some pictures here in a second. What happens is that these shoulder blades, they're meant to move in. So when we squeeze the shoulder blades in, the shoulder blades are supposed to be able to move in. But if these ribs are a little tight, or if we have some issues in that lower cervical, it can affect our shoulder and even our shoulder movement, and pain down the outside of the shoulder when you get that pain in the front of the shoulder. Because what happens is the shoulder blade will then move over to the side and sit to the side, which then makes you recruit everything in the front. It makes you feel like a pinching on the side of your shoulder, and that's a problem. So you can do all the soft tissue and the front of the shoulder and do all the mobilizations to the shoulder. But if you don't look into that lower cervical or the spine, the ribs, as being a probable cause, you're going to have a problem. And that's why, we have many people, and this is why you have to put the neck and the shoulder together, because they literally go hand in hand. And, I always say the first phase of physical therapy is mobility. You've got to look at the mobility. If you don't look at the mobility, you're missing a piece, because lack of mobility means there's some sort of compensation that your body's doing to continue to do that activity. There's tightness from protection. There's tightness from compensation. And if you don't address the mobility and get those pieces to move first, then you never can get into that strengthening stability. Your pain keeps on returning and coming back again. And it doesn't mean to say that we don't do massage for pieces, but we do joint mobs, and a lot of times we'll do joint mobs with some soft tissue that will start opening things up and giving people pretty quick relief. So that's why you can't separate the shoulder from the neck and the thoracic spine, because they're all connected in how they move together. We've had many people that had, rotator cuff surgery, or they're wanting to with a shoulder, they can't lift it up. And then you're asking them questions like, well, what did you do? And they're like, I'm not really sure what I did. I just started hurting one day. And I'm like, okay, you don't have a rotator cuff problem. There's probably something else going on. And sure enough, we're able to mobilize the lower neck into the thoracic spine. And all of a sudden the range of motion improves, her pain is going away, and she's back to doing all of her activities, and canceled her surgery, which would have been a 6-month ordeal. And she might not have even been back fully after the 6 months. So you've got to, again, look at the whole body. So why does all this happen? It's because this is what we look like when we're in front of a computer or sitting or watching TV. We sit in a slouch position, our head comes forward, and our body doesn't like to be in that position. Very much like if I go in and I pull my finger back and I hold that position of my finger, it doesn't like, and I do this 8 hours a day, day after day, year after year, that joint doesn't like being in that position, and you're going to start having some changes. And when that happens, that's when you'll get degenerative changes, which totally can be resolved from doing physical therapy, because it's getting you out of those positions and getting you back into that normal resting position, and our body knowing how to relax in that position to help. But sometimes when we've been here long enough, joints get stiff and they've got to be almost like stretched. That's how I like to describe it. You got to stretch those joints. You got to mobilize those joints in order for things to start moving correctly. The other big culprit that happens is we are always looking at our phone. and we're looking straight down onto our phone, and our neck doesn't like being in these positions. Video games, oh my gosh, we're getting more kids coming in because they're having neck issues and their spine looks like it has almost scoliosis. And it's because they're playing video games in a slouched position, looking at the TV screen while they're playing their video games for hours and hours on end. And this is creating a lot of problems. And so we've got to offset this motion. We've got to take the body into, the opposite direction. And sometimes, for the neck, it just depends. We've got to figure out, is it an upper neck issue? Is it a mid neck? Is it a lower neck? Is it a thoracic? Is it a combination of any one of those things? And this is really when you can come in and talk to a physical therapist that understands all of this, like the specialists at our office. They're going to be able to guide you through the process, teach you what you need to do to get you back into doing like living again. Because let me tell you, when you have pain and it's coming in the neck, you're having, migraines at times, you're completely exhausted because it's so much harder to concentrate when you have pain in and around the neck that you literally like work, come home, sleep, wake up, work, come home, sleep. You don't have a life. You can't go out with your friends. You can't do stuff with your family. It gets to be really exhausting, and you're just trying to maintain what you have with doing a massage and different things, but you're missing the boat. You got to look at the joints, and you got to have some balance and have a game plan as to what are you doing throughout the day that might be creating some of your problems that we can start addressing and giving you some education as to what to do, as well as these are some things that we want you to work on, every couple of hours just to start getting the joint to start becoming more flexible. So these are all different things that we do. We have a great event coming up. It's a neck and shoulder workshop. We're going to go through our top 3 things that are literally going to give you some relief right now, like today, by coming to this workshop. So make sure that you sign up for that. We'll have links for that down in the comment section, as well as other resources that we have for you. Again, this is, why massage doesn't always work, because you're just treating the tissue. A lot of times the tissue is just a symptom of what's going on, and you've got to get to the source of the problem. And I always tell patients where the site of the pain is often not where the source of the problem is coming from. So if you'd like to check out other resources that we have, check out other sources on our Empower Physical Therapy YouTube site. We have a podcast called Empower Your Life. Go to our website. We have a ton of information on there for blogs, free ebooks, and definitely any events that we're having. And our next one that's coming up is actually going to be on the neck and shoulder. So make sure you sign up for those links down below as well.